Hi folks, I'm Evan and I'm going to offer a bit of a reflection on thinking about food systems over the course of the year. What have I learned from thinking about food systems as systems and from taking a systems perspective? Well, thinking more about the industrial food system, in particular about the unsustainability of the industrial food system, this has helped me think about how the prospects for building sustainable food systems depend on changing the relationship between food systems and other systems. So in this class, we've learned about how the industrial food system is made up of lots of different components, right? Production components such as farms, and distribution components such as retail outlets, and waste components such as composting facilities and dumps. So that's the industrial food system. We've also talked about, and we've talked a lot about this, about how this food system is harmful to people and to the planet and to animals, and it needs to change. The industrial food system isn't working for most of us, and that's nothing new. But what has changed over the course of the year is I think less about the individual components of the system or about the relationship between those components, and I've taken a step back towards taking a more of a macro perspective that situates all of the components of food systems in relation to other problematic systems, such as the energy system and such as the financial system. So production components in food systems, such as farms, use petrochemicals, which are really important for producing fertilizers and for producing pesticides. The distribution component of food systems ships food along very long distances using energy-intensive transportation infrastructure. So the food system also releases lots of greenhouse gases, which makes climate change much worse. So these qualities of the food system components mean that the food system is fundamentally linked to the energy system, which is largely responsible for the climate crisis. But also, the companies that make up the different components of food systems, the main agents in food production and food distribution, they're also financed by banks. So many of these banks have also invested heavily in petrochemical and petroleum companies. So this means that the financial system is also fundamentally related to the food system. So what? Why is this important? Well, the first reason why it's important is that the food system is really important, right? We depend on it for survival, not only for our bodies and as living organisms, but for our social metabolism, right? For fueling and feeding the social systems that we depend on, such as the healthcare system, by feeding doctors and nurses, the medical researchers and the people who build the healthcare equipment. The food system supplies them with the energy that they need to do their jobs. So that's one reason the food system is really important. And so thinking about the food system, I think, is pretty important. But also thinking about the way the food system is tied to other systems is important because industrial food systems are unsustainable, so they need to be reconfigured. And this means that the interlocking systems, such as the financial system and the energy system, those also need to change if we hope to create sustainable food systems. But also seeing the connections between parts of the food system and between the food system and other systems is important because we want to be able to break apart the connections that cause unsustainability in the food system and in these other systems. So that is aspects of the food system that are responsible for inequality and ecological destruction. Those result from the relationships with other systems. So we need to break those pieces apart if we want the food system to be more sustainable. So the corporate energy system and the financial system, they need to change so that the food system become more ecologically benign, democratically responsive, and socially just. So now what? Well, at this time we realize how the connections within the food system and between food systems and other systems are vulnerable. Right? They are vulnerable in that they depend on and rely on things from outside. They're not independent and they're not self-sufficient. So if those components cannot survive in a constrained world, then the system needs to change. So this is a good thing because we know that some types of food systems are more sustainable. And so the vulnerabilities to the concurrent system mean that we can make some space for some of those alternatives. So in terms of lessons for collective action and how we can respond in light of this current situation that we're all living in, if we want to build a stronger food system, we need to look for vulnerabilities not only within the food system, but vulnerabilities in other systems that underpin or create that system. So in the wake of the crisis, there are opportunities to drive shifts in the food system, but they'll only be as transformative as the shifts that we also make in other systems, particularly the corporate, financial, and energy systems.